Maybe we should start by discussing Austinlaz & Co. was listed yesterday. You can call it an SME type local manufacturer, but we're expecting a lot more listings this year. What impact do you think these new listings would have on the broader market? We've seen sentiment pretty weak over the last 2 months.
I don't think that we're going to see dramatic change in sentiments. I think that what the market is looking for at this point in time is some sustainability in the sort of growth numbers that we're seeing from companies. I think a lot of the upside that we see for the market this year will be driven by the quality of earnings that we get from the corporates. And the new listings would obviously bring some level of excitement to the market, especially if they're listings that come with some form of credibility and track record. Companies like Austinlaz are a fresh, almost like a fresh start for the market, because these were companies that had been part of the private placement wave.
2008,
2009, thereabouts. And
so hopefully some exit opportunities for people who invested there.
For investors who invested in those stocks at the beginning of 2008 towards 2009. However, I think the long-term trend that everyone will be looking out for is to see what have these companies actually done from 2008 to date, and what is the performance that one is expecting going forward. And I think that will provide more flip for the market than just a direct excitement that's coming out of new listings or certain offerings in the market.
But I think more importantly, it's the companies that get listed really are what I think may actually improve sentiment. If, for instance, we do have these telcos, perhaps not immediately, but if we have the telcos, we already know that some upstream oil and gas companies are already looking to list. So if we have those ones come in, clearly businesses that are quite profitable, that might give a market a lift, don't you think?
It will, Wole, but I think ultimately what we've got to all accept is that what is going to drive this market isn't just the preponderance of new listings or companies listed on the market. It's going to be driven by the fundamentals of the companies. If people believe that there is long-term growth in a telecom opportunity, there's long-term growth in a banking opportunity, then capital will flow towards the market. And I think that probably leads to the next side of our conversation, which is to say, look, do we think that the sort of monetary policy that is currently being run by the central bank, the fiscal structures that we have, are those structures actually, positive for the real economy? And do we see the real economy benefiting from that? And that's what is going to drive the market. If the real economy grows and companies are able to grow their numbers, they're able to announce new investments simply because they see growth for their businesses, then that is when the market will start to react positively.
Right. So monetary policy is key, and we did see yesterday the IMF get into the conversation, actually calling for a pause in monetary tightening, which we've seen over the last 1 year. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think there is actually a merit in calling for actually, not just pausing, but actually loosening monetary policy?
Well, I think you know my views on that. I've always been that I think that the central bank pressed the panic button simply because there were concerns that there was very loose fiscal policy and perhaps just to stabilize the banking industry as well. But the reality is that at the end of the day, one of the things that we learned in Economics 101 is that if you continue to increase interest rates and government is borrowing, the government will crowd out the private sector. We've seen the government crowd out the private sector. Today, government is the biggest borrower in the economy, and we know that government is extremely inefficient at deploying those funds that have been borrowed. So you've got a situation whereby the government continues to borrow. Industry is struggling because they've seen their interest rates move from 12% to 18%, 20% in some instances, prime lending rate in banks. That has had a direct impact on their bottom line. That has directly impacted the capacity of their consumers to buy products. And once you have that sort of situation, the central bank must also realize that at some point, you've got to know when not to over-tighten. It's the same challenge that the U.S. had when with monetary easing, the U.S. Fed did not realize that there was a time when you needed to stop monetary easing, and then people started to take risks that they shouldn't have taken, and we all know what has happened after that. And I think that this is the time when the central bank needs to say, okay, have we achieved our objective? The Naira has strengthened. Inflation, without the fuel price increase, inflation has somewhat stabilized. Now you need to start to think about growth and sustainable long-term growth.
I mean, you made a good point. Naira has strengthened, and actually has been strengthening most of this year. Yeah. And I bring up the issue again. Is there a merit or a case to ask for the central bank to actually loosen monetary policy a little bit?
You know, a strong currency is good when you are a net importer, like we are. You know, but the truth is, as long as we continue to have a strong currency, it's going to always have a negative impact on business, because then business can't compete, simply because it's cheaper for you to bring goods from China than to produce it in Nigeria, because Nigeria's got a strong currency. And China has refused to let its currency strengthen, despite fundamentals showing that it should happen. And those are the issues that we're saying that, look, if you don't focus on the holistic economy and say the real sector, which is what you need to be able to grow this economy sustainably and also provide jobs for people, if that doesn't happen, then you're just going to be running this, the currency strength, you know, my farm is bigger than yours, but really, ultimately, does that help the economy? And
well, I'm sure the conversation will continue ahead of the MPC later this month. Thank you so much, Femi Oladehin, partner at Argentil Capital Partners, giving us his thoughts on monetary policy in Nigeria.